Hi guys, news from Iceland from the volcanic eruption that's going on there. And it's a little bit of a this and that again. Will it end? Will it not end? Will the whole thing end? Is the land rising again? Is it not? Will we see another eruption? So interesting statements again from Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson. And let's have a look at what's happening, because it's not like they thought, oh, the land is only sinking, which was quite unusual if you compare it to the last eruptions. Now it seems there is a refill. So it doesn't look to me that this is the end, but it seems that there are different opinions. We remember in one of my last videos, Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson has announced basically that he thinks the whole unrest on the Reykjanes Peninsula will probably stop by the end of July, August, and then there'll be another period of like sleeping giant for 800 years, like it has been in the past. So he has revived the 800 years to 400 years, and he was relating to other scientists. But you know, is that really the case? I am not convinced, because even if it ends completely at the Sutnuka crater series, there's Fagragalsfjall, there's Eldverp, there's the Krýžovik system, there's so many volcanic systems. If you see here in the map, they're parallel, they're lined up with each other, and we've seen earthquakes at Bardabunga, at Askja, Blafjöll, ski area, everywhere. So that was not all related to what's going on around Grindavik and the Blue Lagoon power plant area right now. So I don't really understand why they think this could be it. Some of you have made the joke, well, they're just saying this so that more tourists will come to the Blue Lagoon again. Who knows? I don't rule anything out. But, you know, jokes aside, it is really so that some are saying, some scientists are saying, and that's Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson at the front, that this scenario, this eruption scenario on the Reykjanes Peninsula that we're seeing here is getting into the final stage. So he said in an interview that the volcanic upheaval at the Sutnuka crater series will end this summer, possibly sooner rather than later. That's what he says, and he's a professor of volcanology. So guys, do you agree with him? What's your gut feeling telling you? I'm not convinced. He said, and despite that, we can expect a 400-year period of earthquakes on the Reykjanes Peninsula. So earthquakes, but no eruption? Where are the earthquakes coming from? Is he only talking about the tectonic movement, where like two tectonic plates are separating from each other, and that's the North Atlantic Rift that basically divides Iceland into two pieces. And since the tectonic plates are tearing away from each other, this opens a gap, a vulnerable area where like magma can come to the surface. It's like cutting your skin. It's like a fracture is opening, and if you tear it apart, more blood will come to the surface. Maybe a weird example, guys, but that's what I could just come up with while we're talking. So he says he expects that the eruption season that has begun basically in October last year with the land rising, and then this massive magma intrusion on November 10th, this 15-kilometer long magma dike that has formed, and since then we've seen the eruptions along that dike. So eruption season in this exact area will end by August at the latest, because he says there's evidence that the flow from the deeper magma reservoir in the more shallow magma reservoir is reduced. This shallow magma chamber is being fed by that flow. They think that the larger magma reservoir is at a depth of 9 to 12 kilometers, and this thing was feeding the past eruptions basically, and always did refill the more shallow magma chamber that is at a depth of around 4 kilometers underneath Swartsengi. And whenever that one was full, had reached the point of maximum capacity, an eruption or an intrusion, but more an eruption was happening. So this is why he says the whole scenario is getting in the final stages. So he says, quote, the last time I calculated this, the flow came down to 3 cubic meters per second, which is usually considered the limit for keeping a flow like this open. And he adds that there's always a bit of uncertainty in these numbers, and we know that this volcanic system, guys, has surprised us quite a bit in the past. So that's why he's drawing these conclusions. And he says if the cubic meters drop completely to 0 per second, that's the end of this eruption phase. That will be at the end of August, the latest. And he says, but if the eruption stops at 1 or 2 cubic meters per second, we will see the end of it at the end of June or July. Interesting theory. We will have to see whether he is right or not. He hasn't really hit the predictions to the point recently. I really like the guy. What I like about him is he speaks things out. And he also did in the past when he said, you know, there's other volcanic systems, the Grindavik system, for example, that could send a lava flow towards Reykjavik, towards the suburbs. So he was the one that said we need to consider building defense walls in these other areas as well, where everyone else was kind of like, oh, you know, better not mention this. This sounds too scary. He did say that. They ask him why the land rise has not started again in this area. And we'll talk about this later because this is quite a difficult topic right now. There is something happening. He says the land rise hasn't started yet. Well, the land rise, that means magma is filling up in that shallow magma chamber again. And his theory is it's because there's still some magma flowing from the deeper magma storage chamber up to the surface, although it is small. So that's why he says the magma has no resistance in the shallower magma storage. Whether that is true or not, it will have to be seen. It could basically be, yeah, it's basically flowing out quite balanced. So what is coming from the deeper magma reservoir is kind of flowing more out than into the shallow magma chambers. And this is kind of what he says the next is kind of where I'm thinking, ooh, could this lead up to an oopsie later? Because we know where the magma chamber is located, underneath Swartsengi, where we have the Blue Lagoon and the power plant. So there's this headline. All indications show that the shallower magma storage compartment is collapsing. And if there's a hollow space underneath the ground and that collapses, it can create a sinkhole. That's as easy as that. I'll explain it to you in a farming way because that's what I do every day on my horse pastures, right? If you have, let's say, for example, like wood underneath the surface of your pasture, if you've been land clearing and there were some stumps and you were burying them underneath your land, it takes a while until they rot and then they collapse. And then all of a sudden it forms a real sinkhole, which is dangerous if you have animals on the pasture. In my case, horses, because they canter, gallop around, and then they can break their legs in these holes. So I always have to watch this. So if that shallow magma chamber collapses and creates a sinkhole, and we have something on top of it, what will happen, right? We know that this is happening with volcanic areas. That's why we see these caldera volcanoes. The big caldera of Campi Flegrei, for example, that we're watching very, very closely. Check out my channel if you're new here. Italy, I can urge you to watch this because that is concerning what's going on there. Kind of, he compares the current eruption scenario with the eruption scenario that we had when the eruption started. The last eruption started on March 16th. So it took a little bit of a time before the land started to rise again, before the magma chamber started to fill up again. Right now, more time has passed than last time, and we still don't see a land rise Although the news came out today that there are indications that the magma chamber is filling up again. So it probably has to reach a certain amount until it starts to let the land rise again. We'll also talk about how much the land did subside, which is quite interesting. But let's finish this here. So Thorvaldur says people should start expecting a land rise in the next few days if the scenario here is the same as March 16th. So then he was asked by a reporter, your theory, does that mean that we have to wait another 800 years before we see the next eruption in this area in the Sutnuka crater series? And then he says, well, that's difficult to answer. It is, because the science is not that progressed. So there's no reason to bash that guy. He just can't know. The science is not there. It's really like a guessing game. But he thinks it is likely that the wait will be quite long. And of course, if he's right with this, then of course, I think this is good news for the town of Grindavik. Maybe, because he says we could see earthquakes for the next 400 years. So these earthquakes were the reason why Grindavik was so damaged, with these fissures and lengthening, cracks opening, sinkholes opening, foundations tilting, homes cracking, right? I mean, yes, there was a fissure opening at the doorsteps of Grindavik that burned down 3 homes when the lava came flowing there. But let's say he's right and there will be no more eruptions. The earthquakes could still be significant. He kind of gives an explanation, and that's interesting because he also now uses the rubber band that I have used first, guys, before anybody else mentioned this. You can give testimony about this. So it's basically what he says, where the Reykjanes Peninsula lies. And like I just said, the North Atlantic Ridge goes right through the Reykjanes Peninsula. And so he says basically you have to stretch a lot. They have to pull away from each other a lot, and before something happens. And then he says it can only withstand a certain amount of stretching. And there he says it's like if you're stretching a rubber band and eventually it snaps. Then before it reaches the point of maximum elasticity, it stops, you can't pull anymore, and then it snaps. And that's basically when we see the eruptions. And then he says when it shrinks, magma opens up to the surface, and then we get these eruptive periods. But then he says it seems to take about 800 years to stretch it so much that it snaps and then shrinks. It shrinks again because it sends the magma out. Interesting theory, but we know that other scientists have said after this 800-year dormancy, they're thinking that this can remain active for years, decades, for up to 300 years. And it'd be very surprising to me if there was like 400 years of earthquakes, no eruption. Well, I just want to say we have to wait and see, but we won't live long enough, unfortunately. But we wait and see what happens in the near future. But on the other hand, he says the volcanic activity on the Reykjanes Peninsula is nowhere near over. He says even though the eruption is finished in the Sutnuka crater series, this is not over. He says we're looking at 400 years of volcanic activity on the Reykjanes Peninsula. And when the volcanic activity ends in the Sutnuka crater series, it will just move to another part of the peninsula. This is not the end of these upheavals. So here we have the explanation. So he just thinks it's over for Grindavik and the Swartsengi area, and then it's going somewhere else. But who tells you that if it's stopping somewhere else, that it's not building up the pressure again in the Sutnuka crater series? So I don't think you can give an estimation that it's over in the Grindavik Sutnuka crater series for 400 years. It could switch back and forth, right? But I think it's interesting to look at these theories, and I think so once this eruption stops, we will have to see whether he's right or not, because usually it takes about like a month until the next event. Even if it now takes longer, we might see the magma chamber refilling itself. So Like I said, a guessing game and a waiting game. What is the MET Office saying? They have released a new hazard map because now we only have one active crater left that is still erupting. It used to be two, but that seems to has died down. And they're saying that the recent data that they confirm that the magma accumulation continues underneath Swartsengi. Lava is mainly flowing right now northwest to Slingerfell, and you can see it here on the map. So it's not flowing super fast anymore. So as of right now, it doesn't seem to threat anything. And we know the lagoonies, the Blue Lagoon is back open. They're saying that the police chief of Sudurns has given them the green light, but that just happened a few days ago. They're saying because they now have a dense network of gas meters. The work is underway to build a road over the lava that has flowed over Nesvik and the Bla Loonsvik, so that it gives them a better access. You can see where this has flown here. That's also basically blocking off access to Grindavik, but of course also access to the Blue Lagoon from there. The Icelandic MET Office has released some pictures of the crater. So there were two craters, and then after a while they were only seeing one crater in the morning. So that activity has basically changed overnight. The crater that is still active right now is basically right next to the crater that has formed, this massive, huge crater that has formed in the last eruption, March 16th eruption. So it's basically in the same area where this crater is still active. Lava is flowing from that crater to the northwest to Slingerfell, and then along Slingerfell to the north. So basically around it, and if it did flow further, it would flow along the defense walls of the power plant, of the Swartsengi defense walls, and over Grindavik again. So it doesn't look like it's approaching fast right now. There's also an active lava flow to the south towards Hagafell. And there I want to show you some pictures that NASA has taken, and they're quite interesting. I mean, that glow that you see from space, but there you can also see this lava flow, how it goes in two directions. And they've already, if you look at the updated hazard map here, the red dot, that is basically the one crater that is still left. And then you can see the gray shaded area where the lava is flowing into zone 1, into Swartsengi there, and how it's flowing down and then towards the southwest along the western defense walls of Grindavik. So that's what's still going on. They're saying after the activity has shifted to a single crater that the lava flow has changed. So the lava flow to the southeast towards, this is here on the map, Fiskidalsfjall has decreased. So that's a good thing. Then they have done deformation measurements, and that's interesting. So they show that the land continues to subside in Swartsengi. So when the magma flow started at the evening of the eruption, when the eruption started, the land underneath Swartsengi subsided by 15 centimeters, but now it has subsided by an additional 4 to 6 centimeters in recent days. So more magma has flowed out of that shallow magma chamber there. But they're saying the fact that the land continues to sink so many days, like 6 days after the eruption has started, is definitely something different from what we've previously seen with the other eruption in the Sudnuka crater series. So in previous eruptions, most of these land subsidences have only been measured in the very first days, and then it was going right back up. So they're saying the subsidence indicates at this stage that we are right now that a greater amount of magma flows out from that magma chamber underneath Swartsengi into the eruption site than it is flowing into that magma chamber. But, and here comes the but, They have done model calculations, and the evaluation of the lava flows in the eruption indicate that the magma accumulation continues under Swartsengi as before. So it hasn't stopped. And also they're saying there's still great danger in Grindavik because this eruption is still creating a significant amount of gas pollution. And that danger is also there for the Blue Lagoon, of course. But let's talk about Grindavik. That's what they're saying, because today the forecast is that the pollution will go to the north and then it will reach the south with the possibility of a pollution for a while inside of Grindavik. And then the day after, it's going to be more northwesterly, and then the gas pollution will reach the southeast. So all over the place, the winds are changing, right? So they're saying there's considerable uncertainty about the amount of gases that are coming from the eruption centers. So that's why this is so dangerous, because the situations can change very, very quickly. Grindavik was without electricity because the lava has flowed over the high voltage power lines again and has done significant damage. So RUV has reported today that they're hoping that they can get back the electricity. But the problem that they're facing, where should they put up the new mast or the temporary mast? Because we're still having that threat from lava flow. So it doesn't really make sense if they build it up and then it's float over again in the past, right? It's not the first time that they have to do this. When Grindavik was damaged by the lava the first time at the doorsteps of Grindavik, they were using helicopters to fly materials and mass over this lava to restore electricity. And now they basically have to do it again. So they hope that electricity will probably fully restore in Grindavik tomorrow. And that's a week basically after the eruption began. But and that's what the project manager says. They're having difficulty right now to make a decision where to use the alternative route for these electric cables to get into the town, because he said a decision that we make today may be wrong tomorrow. And I agree with him, of course, and that costs a lot of money. So overall, they're struggling with the aftermath of this ongoing eruption. The fire department had to fight wildfires again, like moss fires again, in the vicinity of these lava areas. They've been busy with this for the last few days. And of course, this lava brought down these electricity poles, as you can see here. And like I said, work has been underway to restore that, but you see how far this lava stretches, and it's still hot, so it's a difficult thing. Also, they don't know how much this is going to cost yet. This is definitely a financial strain on everyone. So they're saying that the business life in Grindavik that has continued the last few days had to rely on backup power stations while they're trying to restore the main power. And that's what they're saying, more than 4 kilometers of cable must now be laid from the Swartsengi power plant to Grindavik. And also what they're saying is that this cable has a limited transmission capacity, but they believe it's going to be able to handle the electricity consumption that has been in the town for the past few months, because it's mainly only the businesses. There have been like 20 to 30 homes occupied, so it's not super high. So basically the power company is a little bit frustrated with how things are going, because then people are saying, well, couldn't you prepare an alternative route before? You knew that this eruption was coming, and you knew if there's an eruption at the Snuka crater series, it was clear that it would flow towards the Grindavik defense walls again. But then the power company says, well, but your scientists have said that the system might move to Altverb, that is basically west of Grindavik, and that's basically right where they are with their cables and they said that's why we were hesitant to build new high voltage power lines there, because had it erupted at Antwerp, they would have been destroyed there again. So that's why they said what you decide today could be wrong tomorrow, and I understand them. I don't blame them. It is a situation with a lot of uncertainty, guys, but I will keep you updated about this, and I will keep trying to get as much clarity into this for you guys. So thanks again for watching. Please leave this video a like, guys. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for your nice comments, and let's chat about the situation in the comments. And if you're new here, please join a wonderful group of people and subscribe and click the notification bell. Guys, I'll be back with a Campifligri update later tonight. I hope. I know some of you said, where have you been yesterday? I've had so much to do. There's been problems at the farm and a lot of stress. The animals are all okay, so that's not the problem. So I've been struggling a little bit time-wise, but I'll send this video out shortly, and then Campifligri will follow, guys. Thanks so much for your support. I'm really, really grateful. I see you guys. Bye-bye.